Chapter 2, The Gatekeeper's Tale by Jeremy J.R. White. Ulrich woke with a sharp kick in the backside. "Get to your feet, party boy, and clean yourself up. We are to attend the council," exclaimed Sebi, a boy who was a good summer older than Ulrich. He was just as tall but thicker set. He was known as a bit of a joker in the camp. "Do you know you've slept in your own spew all night? You stink like a pig. Oswald may have high regards of you. To me, you're just a silly, spotty kid, so hurry up. I don't want you making me look bad in front of the elders." The newly turned warrior rose to his feet. The pain in his head was sickening. He may have been calm after the slaughter of the prisoner, but now his hands were shaking. Just like a leaf. His head felt like he had an anvil hung from it. "Water, water, please, Sebi. Could you get me some water?" "Get it yourself, you rancid goat. I'm not your slave." "Oh, on second thoughts, I'll get you some water if you want some. Wait there." A mischievous smirk appeared on the older boy's face. These two boys knew of each other to look at, but were certainly not close and certainly not friends. Ulrich had pretty much been Cedric's sidekick, and Seppi had a different circle entirely. A few moments passed. Swoosh! A whole bucket of freezing cold water hit Ulrich flush in the face. So icy chilled that for a moment it stole his breath away. Gasping for air and soaked to the skin, he actually felt somewhat better, and thanked Sabby, which only aggravated the youth even more. Refreshed from his morning bath and feeling slightly more human, he made his way in somewhat reluctant escort to the meeting. This was the first time since yesterday that he was fully aware of how many of his tribe were lost in the skirmish with the Vandals. The makeshift hall was a collection of fallen trees, which formed a clearing in the forest and some large cold rocks to sit upon. On the biggest of the scattered trunks was the warlords, or what was left of them. Only Oswald, along with 3 other battle generals, remained. This is where his father would have sat, but those days are now gone forever. Instead, Lords Egrid, Sigbert, and the Atheling Wuffa made up the council. Wuffa was our tribal prince and heir to the High King's throne. Their chieftain himself, the High King Oswin, sat alone on a great rock. He looked ashen-faced and very pale. Ulrich remembered something about the High King being wounded amidst the drunken fireside stories, but in his intoxication and the grief for his own parents, these details had eluded him. Then Oswald hammered the hilt of his sword onto the back of his shield several times. Bang, 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 and silence swept over the meeting. "Our High Lord Oswin was mortally wounded in the battle and is assured his place at Woden's feast." The entire congregation stared at their king, who looked greyer and weaker by the minute. "He waits eagerly for the gods to call him, and the goddess Freya to escort him home." As Oswald spoke, Ulrich's head spun, and he forced back the pangs of nausea. He vaguely heard his name mentioned in connection with the execution of the prisoner, which led to more backslapping and hair ruffling, which was exactly the last thing he needed when you feel sick. Ulrich noticed the High King was no longer sat on the rock, but lay in a heap on the ground behind. Egrid tapped Oswald on the shoulder and pointed to the floor. Oswald raised one eyebrow, then without missing a beat, proclaimed, "Hail, our great King Oswald has passed to the mighty hall. He will feast with the ancestors tonight. Let us salute him on his way." With this, all at the gathering except Ulrich pummeled their shields with the hilts of their swords. This sounded like thunder to the poor boy's fragile ears. "The young Lord Wuffa will take his place at the head of our tribe, for his blood alone flows with the nobility of the mighty kings back to the beginning of our people." Oswald sat down and Wuffa rose, which led to more bloody shield banging. "My father, may the gods carry him swiftly across the river, was a great king. I only wish I am half the leader he was. We all know our situation is fragile. We have no defences and our numbers are not what they were. We must make the coast within 2 days, for the spring tides will not wait for us. More importantly, we will be safe from attack when united with the other Angle tribes. So my father will have his burial of a king, if it be somewhat a hasty one. So Lord Oswald, will you see to the preparations?" Oswald nodded graciously. He walked over to the old dead king and laid him out respectfully on the ground, then carefully took the symbol of power from around his neck, turned to Wuffa dropped on one knee and passed the new king the talk. Loyal till death, my lord, Oswald murmured. Loyal till death, echoed the words around the gathered Angone warriors. Woofer raised the golden talk high and then placed it around his own neck. Loud cheers and more shield banging then erupted amongst the men. Ulrich shuddered in pain. He thought his head was going to split open. We lost valuable warriors yesterday and many a kinfolk. We will probably lose more on the journey. Our departed king, my father, made treaties with the Saxons that we should work together to gain a bigger foothold on the Sacred Isle. The Britons have become weakened since the loss of their fabled leader. To stay here would be foolish, as all our brother tribes are migrating west and leave a vacuum which we are too few to fill. So let us journey, being guided by the goddess Nertha, to her green, fertile island and build ourselves a new kingdom, a new life for the Angone people. Once again, the warriors cheered their new king. Lord Woofer, may I make a suggestion? Please do, Lord Oswald. I am open to all and indeed expect Father's warlords to help me with any counsel they can. Thank you, my lord. Would it not be more prudent to have your father's funeral once we have made it to the coast and joined with the other tribes? Indeed it would, Oswald. It did cross my mind. The attention that the smoke would draw would not be good. Have the women clean and wrap his body and place him on one of the wagons and we'll pack it with mugwort. My father will journey with us to the narrow sea. With that decision, our meeting is over and we have somewhere to be. Let us make haste, break camp. We will leave shortly. Send out scouts ahead. Yes, my lord. Sebi, Ulrich, follow me, Oswald replied and ordered the two boys to his side. The youths accompanied Oswald across the camp. Listen well, lads. Our lives could depend upon it. You will scout ahead of our main party. About a mile should be good, no more. At the first sign of any strangers, get your asses back here immediately. Is that clear? They both nodded. Oswald led them to the fully laden wagon and pulled back a huge bearskin to reveal all the weapons collected from the battle dead the day before. Ulrich saw his father's mighty axe. Blood still stained the blade. He reached for this weapon instinctively. I don't think so, boy. Not this day, Oswald snapped. Come for it again when you've gained 60 pounds in a few years. Take the light swords and those throwing axes. Your father told me that Cedric taught you well. He said you could split a gnat's hair at 15 paces. Well, let's hope so. Sebi, take that sword and the Vandal hand axe. They should serve you well enough, lad. Right then, boys, grab enough grub for a day. I don't mean so much you stuff yourselves like Roman senators and fall asleep under the first fucking tree you come to. I want you alert. Position yourselves on the crest of that hill, Oswald pointed with his huge sausage-like finger. Wait there until our convoy to move off, and then scout ahead. No further than I said. Is that clear? The two boys nodded. Oswald slapped both lads on the back and shoved them in the direction of the horses. We will see you when we make camp tonight. Please don't get yourselves killed. Ulrich, you have the makings of a fine warrior, and Sebi, you make me bloody laugh. I would miss you both greatly. Oswald grunted a chuckle as he left the scouts to go about their task. The two boys saddled their chosen mounts and rode to the place where they were told to wait. They glanced back at the camp, and from that distance their people looked like ants scurrying here and there. The responsibility of this job began to sink into Ulrich until he was interrupted by his scouting partner. So are you really any good with them then? Sebi asked, pointing at his companion's throwers' axes. I don't know. These are a lot heavier than my old ones. Well, let's find out. We'll both try. See that notch in that tree? I'll go first. Ulrich passed Sebi one of the huge axes. He could tell by his stance and the way he held the weapon that he didn't have an earthly clue what he was doing. Sebi aimed, swung and flung the axe. It missed the mark by a good 6 feet and spun off into a dense clump of stinging nettles. You can go and get that, can't you? That was mine, Ulrich replied with a chuckle in his voice. It's your axe, you get it. On second thoughts, I'm a man of my word. If you hit that notch, I will get it. On your oath as a warrior? On my oath to Lord Odin. I swear it. Ulrich balanced the axe in his hand, compensating for the extra weight. He used his thumb and his index fingers of his left hand to aim, positioning the notch between them. He swung the axe back and then propelled it forwards, removing his left hand at the very last moment. Thunk! The axe hit the tree, splitting the target in two. He was shocked with the force and the impact. The heavier weapon flew straight as an arrow. It had perfect balance. Sebi was just shocked full stop and stood with his mouth hanging wide open. Ulrich asked, "I hope you remember you're a man of your word." Sebi said nothing, just walked over and waded into the nettles, cursing at every fresh sting. It took him maybe 60 to 70 stings to find the axe. And when he had, he sat down next to Ulrich and he spoke with a newfound respect resonating in his voice. And whilst he scratched his juicy, bulging nettle stings, "Can you teach me to do that?" "Of course I can, but it doesn't happen overnight. It takes hours, and I mean hours of practice." The lads noticed that down below the party was starting to move off. So they mounted and slowly walked their horses along the road in front of them that headed to the coast of the narrow sea. The boys had been travelling for about 2 hours and entering a densely wooded part of the journey. They were discussing the possibility of stopping for some food when a crashing sound exploded from their left. There was two huge warriors mounted on battle steeds. One of them charged his horse straight into the side of Ulrich's mount, catapulting the boy out of the saddle and thundering into the ground with a sickening thud. The other dragged Sebi from his horse by his thick blonde hair. As Ulrich's senses came back to him, fear and panic coursed through his body. He ran for his life and scampered up a tree as quick as he could. The warrior below bellowed out a huge laugh, grabbed his battle axe and started chopping at the trunk. "My, what brave soldiers they build in fucking Engel," the brute shouted. The youth's thoughts were fast and random, thinking, "Is this the way I'm going to die? Will I feel much pain? Is this the end? Will I see my father? Will I see Woden?" Then he looked across and saw Sebi being pinned to a tree with one powerful arm. His feet dangled and kicked in the morbid jig that awaited death. Then the calm came. "No!" the boy screamed and took one of his new axes, swiftly hurling it down at his attacker, hitting the man plumb in the forehead. Thunk! The warrior fell dead. The boy jumped down from the tree, then threw his other axe, embedding it right between the shoulder blades of his friend's assailant. Sebi dropped to the ground, gasping for breath. The warrior turned and staggered towards the axe thrower. Ulrich drew his sword and lunged at the beast of a man. The huge bandit's momentum kept him falling forwards. Ulrich stumbled and down they went, the assassin, the boy, and the sword. There was some resistance before the blade ripped through the warrior's tunic, pierced his belly and passed straight out the other side. He rolled out from underneath this bear of a man and stood covered in hot steaming blood. "You're fucking wounded," exclaimed Sebi. "Not me. That's from that horse spawn," Ulrich panted, then fell back on his haunches. He looked extremely gaunt and pale. "Seb, go get help. I'll stay here. I have no energy left." "Rest, my friend. You saved my life. You rest." Sebi mounted quickly and gabbled off in the direction of the main convoy, screaming like a banshee. "Bandits! Bandits! Bandits!" Ulrich collapsed back and stared up through the branches of the trees. On up to the blue sky above. Something moved on the uppermost brows. The boy twisted his head to see a glimpse of the creature, and there was the raven. He was sure it was the same one from the previous night. The bird turned and looked to his right. Oswald was coming. The raven stared back at Ulrich as if to say, "You're safe now," and flew away. Oswald arrived in a mad frenzy with a dozen warriors, waving his axe in the air like a madman. "Scour the area, see if there's any more of these putrid dogs hanging around. I am sick of their backstabbing." He dismounted as the boy rose to his feet. Two? In hand-to-hand combat, and both of them great bullocks? My word, Ulrich, your father is not dead. He lives on in you, boy," Ulrich declared as he slapped the lad hard on the back and knocked any wind that was left inside out. "Did you feel it? Did you feel it? Come now, boy, did you feel it?" The battle calm. "Yes, my lord. Only the greatest warriors are calm in the heat of battle. What an edge it gives you over other men. You know what, boy? I recognize these scumbags from the other day. Stragglers looking for easy sport. Well, you certainly ruined their plans." Oswald turned to look at the other two war horses. What fine steeds these carcasses had. Some good weapons too. "So, my boy, you're now a man of property." Just at that moment, Lord Woofer rode up. "Everything okay, Oswald?" "Exceedingly good, my lord. Young Ulrich bagged himself a couple of big uns, and just about a bootstrap of a lad himself." Ulrich, I am proud you are in my company. One day you will make a great warlord. You can put a sword in a man's hand, but you can't give him the courage to wield it. Courage can make you feel 10 feet tall and 6 feet wide, and you have more than your fair share, lad. Lord Woofer smiled at the lad, took off his own solid arm ring and tossed it to the boy below him. Wear it proudly, boy. He picked up the token, filled him with pride, and wished his parents could be there to see him honoured by their king. A tear welled in the youth's eye. Sebi, who was still mounted, saw his friend's emotions beginning to get the better of him, so stood in the stirrups and farted loudly, which made the whole group laugh. You can always trust Sebi to shit himself, Oswald remarked, and a smile returned to the hero's face. After 20 minutes of backslapping, the lads returned to the convoy. 2 others took their places this day's scouts. Sebi appointed himself in charge of Ulrich's bounty, also of the telling of the day's deeds to the youngsters of the group, although in his telling, the fart took a far bigger part than it did in the battle. By mid-afternoon on the second day, they could see the sea. They made camp and prepared for the morrow's boat trip. The boys were very popular with the older girls, each wanting to hear the tale afresh. Sebi took great pride in his story, every time slightly more exaggerated. Ulrich, although liking the attention, felt slightly embarrassed and was not yet comfortable with his newfound fame. Seb, can we get rid of this lot for a while? I feel like I can't breathe, and there's something I promised to teach you. His friend nodded and shooed the gaggle of swooning girls away. The lads spent the next 2 hours hurling axes at trees by the light of the campfire. They laughed, they joked, and just for a while they enjoyed being boys again. End of chapter 2.